Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Crusoe. Welcome to my channel where you learn how to get hired and thrive in the film industry. If you're new here, please be sure to subscribe.
All right. My name is Jorge del Valle. I'm a local Atlanta sound guy. I work on feature films and episodic television.
Awesome. And you want to share some projects you've worked on?
I've day played on a lot of, not a lot of big features, but I've day played on like, Guardians, Black Panther, and then I've done little TV shows like Drop Dead Diva. What was another one? Oh, I've done a Hallmark movie, The Lost Valentine. Uh, and then um, I've done a little bit of E&G work, some commercials, a couple of music videos, and um,
What was
that's not
that?
my
ENG?
E&G translates to electronic news gathering, and what they
Oh, okay.
have a recorder and some wireless microphones in a bag that you wear. You kind of put it over your shoulder, or nowadays they've got harnesses, and you're basically what they refer to as a one-man band. That means you're doing everything by yourself. um, Booming, mixing, and then, before the cameras roll, wiring talent, getting things under control, like if you're indoors, the AC running, which you can hear. If you're near a kitchen, the refrigerator and the coolers running. You basically have to do all that mostly by yourself when you're doing an E&G style project, which is what a lot of reality TV is based on. And the pay is pretty good, but you're sacrificing a lot, mainly your back, because you have to carry a lot of heavy gear all
Yeah,
day.
I was about to say, how does that affect what you bring to work with you and how many people are in your department at that point?
You're the only one in your department. I mean, you have to either rely heavily on PAs to relay information or to go do things themselves, um, or you're doing it on your own. I've definitely been part of small commercials, and then excuse me, and then I've been a part of big commercials. So there's a lot of help on bigger commercials, and um, you can kind of slide with asking for help. But on smaller projects, you're pretty much on your own. Um, and that's in that world, that E&G world. That's kind of, it takes a certain individual to be willing to do that. Um, Nothing wrong with it. People make great livings at it, and they make pretty good projects. Or rather, excuse me, they're involved in pretty good projects, some fun things. um and they don't necessarily work every day of the week, which is kind of nice. When most people work 5 days a week, sometimes six, on those super rare occasions seven. But when you're only working 2, maybe 3 days a week, and you can still make a pretty decent living, it's not bad.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something, I feel like especially for someone just getting into the industry, I feel like there's this hustle and want to like get on a Marvel movie or, what have you. But it's like those movies, the scale of it is just
Yeah,
so huge.
it's
And
it's it's a,
it's
it's a
like,
circus for sure. It's a circus
yeah,
for sure, because it's 200 people running around. Everybody's doing what they got to do, and if anybody asks any help from anybody else, it's kind of to be queued until they're done with whatever they have to do, and then they'll come back and help you. But on a show like that, it's you have to kind of have like that tunnel vision, because it is chaos. It is a lot of people running around doing what they got to do, and if you lose focus of what you're doing, you could drop the ball somewhere.
absolutely. And can you speak to like any kind of etiquette that goes with wiring talents?
Sure. Wiring talent is a delicate process, because you're not just dealing with a piece of equipment, you're dealing with a person. You have talent, men and women, and then you have, children. So
Mm-hmm.
usually the easiest talent to wire is usually the male actors, because they're not in, their wardrobe is usually less elaborate, if I may say. I'm not even sure if that's the correct word, but it's easier to hide a microphone on a male actor. On a female actor, you kind of have to, not necessarily tiptoe, but you kind of have to sort of like be almost hands off, because, you know, as a guy wearing a female, you know, there's a certain proximity that you have to be aware of, and how many liberties you take as far as like, you know, moving the wire where it needs to go so nobody can see it. Um, Sometimes you have to ask for help, not because you need it, but just because it's probably more comfortable for the female actor to, you know, just so you can get the microphone to where it needs to be so it sounds good and it's hidden from camera. And then with children, you usually have to have either mom and dad or the costume person present while you're doing it. Sometimes, especially with, again, female child actors, you have to have somebody else do it. Just it's not like it's just, you know, a thing where you have to sort of be careful because you don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And but of course your primary job is to make it sound good. And the secondary just below that, which is a really close second, make sure nobody can see it on camera. So it's I've had instances where it's more like, you know, do you mind if somebody else does this? Or I've had instances where they go, yeah, no problem. And it's more like, just do what you got to do. They literally put their hands up in the air and you go, just do what you got to do. You know what I mean? um, it's a thing that also first impressions go a long way. They have to know right away that you're there for that one job and that's it. You know, the camaraderie and the, you know, the bantering and all that comes later, when you're
Mhm.
having to deal with this person every day for, you know, between 5 weeks to 6 months.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's a great point of, establishing up front, you're both there to do a job at the end of the day.
Right.
And, regardless of what that wardrobe may look like, I mean, it just comes with the territory,
And you know,
sometimes.
and as far as the wardrobe goes, it's not as upfront as it seems. At first glance at the wardrobe, you can, a lot of people go, oh, you know what, he can't wire this, so there's no reason to ask. You should always, as a sound utility or as a sound person in general, you should always insist on either looking at the wardrobe ahead of time if there's a fitting, or if there's a red flag about the wardrobe and putting a wire on them, you definitely need to insist on going over there and having a look, because I've wired women in bikinis, which is, where the hell do you hide the microphone and the pack and all that, right?
Right.
So, but it's possible, but you have to have firsthand knowledge of, one, what the scene, what's taking place, two, the coverage, the camera, and then, you know, what the actual wardrobe is. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say, and I would imagine, for running with the bikini example, it's like, is it gonna get wet? What's the full action is in it? Are they gonna be doing a stunt in it? Like, does that affect the way you wire things as well?
Yes, you have to consider all those elements. For example, if this woman was in a bikini going in the water somewhere, you might not want to put the microphone, you know, around her waist. Try to put it up as high as possible. Maybe the hair can cover it up in the back, you know, because sometimes bikinis have the where it comes down like this. You know, you clip the microphone up here high, because I doubt she's going to say any lines with her head underwater.
Yeah,
You know, sometimes
absolutely. Yeah, that makes
sometimes
sense.
it's sometimes it's that easy. Sometimes it's more like, um, you know, is she getting splashed on? Is she not necessarily in the water, but she's getting wet? You know what I mean? Or, you know, sometimes, you know, hey, is there gunfire? Is this person getting shot at? Do they have a squib? Do they need a microphone? Because are they going to really say this line, or can we get it with the boom? You know, those are all
Yeah,
those considerations need to happen on the day, and you need to make those decisions like that.
absolutely. So where you have to, really think quick on your feet, and with experience comes, really effective decision making. I
Yeah.
think.
And it
Uh,
does get easier. It does get easier
mhm.
because the more times you have to be exposed to a particular either problem or scenario, you know, you can, you know, you build up the sort of like the confidence to have to deal with it. You know what I mean? And then you can say yes or no without having to really think about it. Only experience will dictate how well it comes out. You know what I mean?
Well, before we get ahead of ourselves too much, I love where this conversation is going. It's so
Sure.
fascinating. I want to backtrack a little bit to how did you get your start in film and what was your progression to your current role today?
While I was in high school, I had decided that I wanted to be a filmmaker, but my high school did not have a filmmaking program. They did have a broadcast communication slash video production program. That's a good enough start. One summer, I was like, you get those anxiety attacks where you're like, I got to do something right now. And me and my dad were looking for somehow, and we saw somehow for me to get started. And we saw this ad, people looking for, this company was trying to film a feature and they needed crew members. Didn't know what I was going to do. We went and met up with them. Um, and they're like, okay, so you're going to be one of our camera assistants. I had no clue. And,
Wow.
just help with whatever you can, basically. This was when I was 16 years old. That was my first film production set experience.
That's pretty sweet. Working in
Fast,
camera at 16.
fast forward, fast forward a decade later, and I had been working at Channel 5 for about 10 years, and I got let go. And then I kind of like spent 6 months kind of floating around, trying to find another job. But I had met these musicians who, just kind of like this clique of musicians who would play different gigs. And one of them was a sound mixer. He's now he was then a sound mixer, but he was kind of like doing this part-time rock star, part-time filmmaker thing. His name is Todd Weaver. I don't know if you know who that is.
Mm-mm.
He's another sound mixer. He's been doing it a little bit longer than I have. And I showed some interest. And one day, it was like 7 p.m. He said, I need somebody for tomorrow morning. Can you be down in Peachy City? And that was my first real paying job as a filmmaker. Super low on the totem pole, no experience whatsoever. But I think it took off from there because I had a pretty good attitude about keeping up with it and not being discouraged by the fact that it is all freelance work, and it's not, and it really is feast or famine. I'm sure you've experienced that. But then it was like, one day this week, and then it became one day next week, and then it became 2 days the other week, and then it became, oh, we've got this feature that goes for 4 weeks during the summer. And then, it just took off from there. And that was 10 years ago. That was a little over 10 years ago. And thankfully I've been able to make a living at it since.
So that show must have been Drop Dead Diva, right? Or was it?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Nice. Yeah, I mean, shoot, so many people got their start on that one or Vampire Diaries. Those were like the two
Those were the
shows.
two. Yeah. And when I first started, they played on Drop Dead Diva, and then it became Vampire Diaries at the same time. So it was like flopping between the two. There was an overlap period between the two when the two shows were actually going still, and they were both doing
Yeah.
double up days. So it was like, Tuesday we're at Drop Dead Diva, and then Wednesday or Thursday we're at Vampire Diaries. And it went like that for a couple of months. And then we
Hmm.
did the feature over the summer, but by then, the shows had finished. They wrapped production.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, times have changed. It's crazy. Like I used to know everything that came into town, and it's like, oh, it's the one or two features and one or
Right,
two
right, right. Now
shows, and
it's
now it's
like
like,
10 or 20 features and episodic TV. And it's like, who's on what? Why? I thought he was on this other show. And then, da da da. And,
yeah,
it's become to where for a while there, you used to have, like you said, you used to have your pulse on your thumb on the pulse where you knew about everything. And now it's like, there's just too much to keep track of. And which
yeah.
makes which is kind of like not a bad problem to have. But then again, when you're not really aware of what's going on, you can miss out on an opportunity.
Where that shift has happened, you made your connection, you got your reputation solidified on it sounded like 2 shows, and then from there, like, how did your other opportunities arise?
Well, yeah, I'm sure you have had that learning curve about networking and communicating. So it just became to where I'd have to reach out cold to sound mixers. Hey, if you need somebody, I'm local and I'm available. Hey, I'm Jorge. If you're looking for, a third or a sound utility for the show that I heard coming up, let me know. I'm available. And it just had to either cold emails or cold phone calls. For the most part, it's worked out in my favor. But then again, I've had phone calls where they go, "Oh yeah, I'll save your number," and never hear for that person for
Absolutely. That's something I wanna speak to real quick of, like, definitely when people are starting off, like, don't get discouraged if you hear, like, absolutely no
when the
response,
phone doesn't ring.
because that is everybody's journey for, like, at least the first 3 months. Like, if you get a job within your first 3 months of trying to get into the film industry, you're doing a good job.
To get when you first starting out, if you can get those phone calls where it's like, "Hey, I've got 2 days next week. Are you available?" You're doing pretty damn well, because those are
Absolutely.
the opportunities that you need to say yes. And if you need to cancel like your shift at Arby's, then you got to cancel your, or whatever whatever it is that you're doing. If this is something you're going to pursue, that's the way to go about it. Hey, I've got this thing. Are you available? Yeah, I'll put me down. And you take care of whatever else that you have to make yourself available. You go, yep, I can do it. And then you take care of it. Yep, I can be
Yeah.
there. And then make sure you're there. It is way, way jerking you out of your comfort zone when you've got something steady, like, and I hate to make this the example, but it's like the filmmaking example that will forever be the only thing anybody can relate to, is being a waiter or a waitress,
Mhm.
or just something that that's super flexible. But you need to have that attitude to where, as far as like getting your next job, is when somebody calls you, one, you answer the phone immediately. Two, you say, yes, I'm available. And then three, you get yourself covered on your other job, because quitting a job on the whim is not something um, you want to get used to. A good way to look at it is that you need to start looking ahead as far as like how you fill up your days, just so obviously, so you can make a living.
Yeah, that's great advice of, don't just, yes, be, available at the drop of a hat, but don't just all of a sudden turn your life upside down by quitting a job for 2 days
Correct.
worth of work.
Right, right,
You
right.
gotta make sure
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
sustainable before you quit that side hustle.
Yeah, yeah. And nowadays more so, because we're kind of like, productions are ramping up because of, they were all shut down because of the pandemic. People are, a lot of filmmakers had to forcibly go on unemployment. When somebody calls, hey, I've got a day, I've got a commercial or I've got a music video that's for 2 days, they don't want to take the 2 days if it's going to cancel out their unemployment, which is a huge deal, because you can't not report your income to unemployment. You have to, it's just like you said, you have to verify or vet the sustainability of the jobs that you take before you turn your life around, or before you turn your life upside down, just so you can do this job.
I think that's a great point with with COVID-19 right now of, like, if you're really relying on unemployment right now and you don't have your reputation built up in the industry yet, like, if you're only getting called for 1 or 2 days worth of work, A, you better nail those 2 days if you take it.
Yeah.
uh, and B, yeah, like, I can't emphasize enough the importance of, like, digital networking right now. Like you were saying earlier, just like cold calling, cold emailing, like doing research of, like, who's the working crew in your area. Like, find out what's films and look up the crew. It's not hard, like on IMDb, and just yeah, reach out. And it can take a while to break in because, I mean, you know how it is. Like, we may be working, a crew may be working for 9 months straight. They literally don't have an opening for 9 months. It's
Right.
not that they may not want to hire you, it's that it's got to be, it's all about timing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like, you may be the best, you may be a great candidate, but unless there's an opening at that exact time, you're just not going to get hired.
Right. And then also on top of that, as far as like making sure you get those opportunities, you sort of need to stay in, like you cold call them and they say, no, we don't have anything available, but you need to stay in contact with those people. Even if it's just to say, hello, I'm still available if you're looking for anybody in the future.
Absolutely.
Just so their name keeps rolling around in their head. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I like to advise people to follow up every 3 months. I feel that's enough to not berate someone, but, you know, it's enough distance that something may have shifted within 3 months.
I know this PA, and I did a job called Uncle Drew 2, 3 years ago, and that was her very first job on a film set. She had no real aspirations to be a filmmaker, but one day she cold called the production company because she was looking for a job, and they didn't necessarily hire on the spot, but they said, okay, we'll give you a shot. You'll go to set and you'll be a set PA. And she did her first, her first phone call. She got a 6 week job,
That is
having no,
unheard of.
having no experience, having no film background whatsoever. Her first phone call, she got a 6 week job. And now she's been doing it ever since. And it's been over 2 years now.
That's fascinating. That's
And
what's so crazy about this industry of like, you can be the one that's hustling and grinding for months, and then you hear a story like that, you know.
yeah. Because it definitely, like, for me and for, like you said, for a lot of people, it's never, oh, okay, you start tomorrow for the next 9 months. Oh, you start tomorrow for, it's never like that. It's like, okay, cool, we'll file your name. And if we ever need anything, we'll see if we'll give you a call. By see if we'll give you a call means, oh, I've got 20 other names to roll through until I get to yours. It's always like that. It's always like that. My best advice is to just not give up. Always have a backup plan, but just don't give up if you really want to do this. Especially now here in this town in Atlanta, the opportunities are there are just so many to where there's no reason you can't have a decent job. You may have to start out as a PA, but you can definitely move into props, move into sound, move into camera, which a lot of people have done. I guess the best way to put it is you have to pay your dues. And part of paying your dues is sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring. Okay, so the supervisor or the key position is the sound mixer. And he's the one who basically owns all the gear. He's got a cart that's similar to this guy, or sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, sometimes it's a bag. And he has to record any dialogue. He has to make sure that all the dialogue is recorded, labeled correctly, and delivered as needed. The boom operator, which is sound mixer, boom operator, is the guy on the set with the boom pole, which is that thing back there, if you see it.
Yeah.
And he has to make sure that the sound mixer has enough microphones to record all the dialogue that's necessary. And sometimes he could be out there by himself. Sometimes he'll have help from the sound utility as a second boom operator to get a piece of dialogue. Nowadays, well, it's been like this for maybe more than a few years, but everybody gets a microphone. My experience has been that it's the boom operator, and then the sound utility is the guy who's wiring everybody. That's most common, but it's not like that for everybody. The sound utility, which is the third man down, low man on the totem pole, if you want, has to, for the lack of a better term, has to take care of everything else, which, goes from transporting the gear to make sure it gets to where it needs to be, to sound issues on location, traffic on the streets, background noise, any machinery that's running making noise that could pollute the soundtrack. You know what I mean? That's why it's not, that position is it's a very important one, and it's not how it's perceived by a lot of other departments. It's definitely not an entry level position. It's the sound utility is not the sound PA by any definition, because he definitely makes a lot more money. No offense to any PAs out there listening to this, but that's why you see older guys or older women who are sound utilities, because they make a pretty decent living, and it has to be a very technical position. One of those is wiring talent, and he has to coordinate with the sound mixer and the boom operator as far as who needs to be covered and how. And that is not the only job. On top of that, that's not the only job, or that's definitely not the most important job for a sound utility, because he also has to coordinate with the camera department as far as like time code for the cameras, time code slates, getting a video picture. I'm not sure. Oh, they went away. Sorry. I was going to point back here. Sometimes you see the two monitors, and
Oh,
because the
right.
sound mixer needs to be able to see what's going on the set and what the camera's seeing. He's got to coordinate with either video or camera to get that picture. And, power for charging batteries and the cart. Again, that's a laundry list of like that keeps you busy. Grab the gear at call time, you push it on the set, and you don't stop moving for the next couple of hours. And when I say moving, like you're running around, coordinating, moving things around, making things happen. It's the low man on the totem pole, but that's a position that should be a high ranking position as far as like the crew goes, because that is the sound department administrator. And that's the
Right.
low man on the totem pole. The other two guys are coordinating with each other as far as how they want to go about covering a scene. But the sound utility is the guy who has to really make it happen, because he's got to, what microphones are we using? Who gets the microphones? That thing is making noise. We got to cut it off. Special effects want to bring in a fan, or all sound issues are addressed by the sound utility. And if he needs backup from the boom operator or sound mixer because somebody doesn't want to play nice, then they step in. But he's the one that's out there making things happen.
Absolutely. Boots on the ground, literally. Awesome. And what knowledge and tools did you need to learn and acquire? And I'm just gonna presume this may vary from position and maybe by studio to budget. So
Uh-huh.
I'll let you take the lead on that.
Tools. Well, like I said, the sound mixer is the owner of all the gear. He's the one that has to make sure that um, of all aspects of getting clean sound, he's got to make sure that he has a contingency for all of them, which ranges from time code for the cameras to hog's hair to make sure that the rain doesn't make noise, um, and carpeting for people's shoes and feet. And then I've been on jobs where they've had foam walls, because they'll go into a room that's very, very bright, that reflects a lot of sound, so it sounds super echoey. So you bring in these foam panels so you can drop some of that down.
So would you say that would be an instance of what would happen on a tech scout, where they're going around, every representative from each department is going around to each location? It's like, oh, it sounds really echoey in here. Is that a conversation that happens ahead of time? Because I'm sure our department is going to have their own say in what can and can't go on the walls. And same with lighting, like if it's, all white, is it going to be reflective? Or was that a situation, like, was there a specific example in mind of
Well, when you're prepping for a specific show, absolutely. The sound mixer
mhm.
goes on the tech scout and he takes notes. Hey, this location has these issues. What can we do about it? Do we need to talk to another department about this? Like you said, art department, or maybe even locations. Yes, that is the opportunity to know ahead of time what the problems are. And then, contingencies you develop from there. And then again, you have to speak to other departments about, like you said, our department, what can we put on the walls? Or the glass in the picture frames, can we get rid of those? Or can we put down, does this floor need to be hardwood, or can we cover it with carpeting? That those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think that's where communication between departments is just huge of like, even on the day, putting down a carpet, but camera's like, "Oh, but we're gonna do a dolly move where we come out and we're gonna see the floor." Like those type of conversations need to happen before the
Well,
camera's rolling.
sometimes, yes. In the Tech Scout, that's the opportunity to get in the DP's head because the DP's out there with this gaffer, with this key grip, as far as like, here's how we're going to accomplish this shot. But he's only really concerned about how the camera is going to be in that space. You need to ask him, hey, are we doing 40-foot a dolly track here, or can we put some carpeting down on the day? Yeah, okay, fine. Coordinate with locations as far as what has to be done to, like, either can we kill the power to the kitchen, or can we just unplug the refrigerator, or the AC, can we just keep the AC turned off for the location and then bring in our own ACs that we can control in, or turn on and off throughout the day. Those are definitely issues that need to be brought up during the Tech Scout, because that is your opportunity to know what you're getting yourself into and how you're going to resolve it and how you're going to get the quality of sound that you need. The boom operator usually owns all his own boom poles.
Okay.
Sometimes he has his own mounts. Most boom operators have a little caddy. I don't know if you can see that, but my Apple box that's back there, where you can put your boom pole down, and or you can use the like a, what they call a boom box, which looks like an Apple box, but it's something for you to stand on if you need, like, some height issues or whatever. And boom operators usually have quiet tennis shoes, something comfortable, but something that doesn't make noise when they walk.
Do you
Um,
have any recommendations for brands?
I like Under Armour shoes, but any shoe that's light, that is flat, that has a, like, it's like a flat bottom to the shoe, that doesn't make much noise. Those are the things that you really have to look at when you're buying a pair of shoes for work. You can't be the boom operator making the most noise on set. So your pole has to be maintained, which is why you own it. You clean it, make sure everything's there's no squeaky knuckles or anything like that. You make sure that your shoes don't make any noise while you're on set. Sometimes there are boom operators who like to keep like a little pouch of like materials for wiring at the last second, or if there needs to be a wiring decision made on the moment because they're in between takes and then needs to be fixed. He can run in there. So a little pouch to carry some stuff in, maybe a pair of scissors, definitely a flashlight, headphones. Like, now that, okay, headphones. So these are the most common headphones used. I have modified these because I wanted to add a different cable, but these are Sony MDR 7506s.
Nice.
Done. You know,
Mm.
um, pads can always be replaced because these will always wear out. These are about $100. These are the most common headphones because they are the great combination between affordability and audio quality. If you're a guy like me who wants to invest in himself, as far as their tools, you would get a set of these. These are in-ear monitors. And, these are practically just earbuds, but you see how, I'm not sure if you can see that these are kind of weird looking. It's because they're molded to my ear canal.
Yeah, that's really cool.
But when you get into something like this, you're looking to spend. These cost me out the door. These cost me $1,500.
Wow.
Yeah, and because these are what musicians use when they're performing on set. So as far as like the little electronics that are in there, they're finely tuned, so you get everything that you need to get. And these specifically are made for vocalists, people who sing. Boom operators need to be able to hear the full range of the microphone. And cheaper headphones don't only hear you only hear this section and like this section of the entire audio spectrum. So boom operators need to hear, for the most part, all of that. So they need to invest in some headphones. These are perfect for that because of the, they've got the, the bigger speaker in here. And that's, barring any more technical data than that, these are great.
Any other recommendations you want to share? Like, what's a good starter kit? And then also, if someone's looking to be a utility, like you mentioned, having stuff on like your person, what would be on your person at all times?
Okay, so if you're going to start, obviously you would start at the lower position, which would be the sound utility, which, you know, most sound departments are willing to bring in a novice, somebody who doesn't have much experience, so they can, you know, say, hey, we mold this person, and, you know, by the second job they're fucking on top of it. Sorry, I cursed. But if you're gonna start out, have a pouch where you can carry materials in, and it's like things like for wiring, moleskin, tape, what we call hush lavs, um, bumblebee, you know, overcovers. You need to carry materials on you. So if you go to, like, let's say REI, you could probably find a decent pouch. If you go to like an Army Navy place, you can find a decent pouch. Most sound departments will have a walkie, if not two, one for the sound mixer, and then the utility needs to be able to, like, pick up a walkie and communicate. So you either need a walkie pouch to keep that in on your belt, or you just clip it on. But you also need, you know, and this became a real problem for me because I was gung-ho. I was like, I'm going to have my surveillance in one ear and my headphones in the other, and I'm going to be listening to everything. But when you do that, you listen to everything, which is
And
a lot
like,
of it's a lot of chatter in your head, and you know, so I stopped wearing the walkie. But after a few years, I could say I don't need the walkie. I know where I need to go to communicate. But, you know, you still need it to be able to throw out a, you know, hey, we need to shut off that condor, or hey, you know, there's this traffic. Are we going to have ITC? Blah blah blah. Because sometimes you're not next to the AD or the locations person or whomever it is that you need to be. So the walkie is handy. Decent pair of headphones. Do not, you will never be taken seriously if you bring your Apple earbuds, like from your phone. You know what I mean? Like, they'll work fine in a walkie. They will work in like what we call an IFB, so you can listen in. But nobody's going to take you seriously if you've got your little, you know, earbuds from wherever. Spend $100 and get like these guys, as far as for headphones. And then from then on, you know, you can invest more because there are cheaper in-ear monitors than these that I'm wearing. And then, you know, it's a thing where what you need to realize is that you need to be able to hear what's being recorded so you can identify problems that you can't see.
yeah,
And
absolutely. Between camera and mics, they see and hear differently than the human body. Definitely.
yes, that is very true. But it's only because of what you're perceiving is going on in the scenario. Because I remember this one scenario, I felt like an absolute idiot. There was this dinner scene at a restaurant, and these two people having, you know, a meal. And I couldn't figure out which one of these dishes was making the most noise. And I was sitting right there staring at them. And I'm like, I'm hitting the table so they would make noise so I could find them. But there were so many that I couldn't figure it out. So my immediate response was to separate everything so nothing's touching. So when somebody bumps the table, it doesn't clank on whatever's next to it. Dishes, you know, put padding down so there aren't two, like a let's say like a teacup and a dish. You put something in between them so they don't make noise. You have to, but when you have so many, sometimes it's hard to identify which is which. You do it for everything. But if you take the attitude of, I'm just going to do it all, you won't have to worry about it later. But you have to do that ahead of time. Sound utilities also, before I move on, sound utilities don't need to have a boom pole right away. Usually the sound mixer or the boom operator will provide a boom pole for them to use. And it's not like it's something they need to be on top of. It's, you know, we'll have a boom pole for to use. We'll just prepare one. So when we call for a second boom and we need to put you on the set, we'll have it ready. But that's not an expense that a utility has to go through before they start looking for work. You know, I would say most importantly would be, you know, headphones and a pouch where you can carry materials in, because, you know, materials and batteries, you know, somebody needs a new battery for their Comtech, you need to be able to pull it out of your ass. You need to practically go, oh, I've got one, and it's taken care of. You can't go, oh, let me go grab one. It takes you a couple of
Right.
minutes to run to the cart and then back and then whatever. You will have to, eventually you will buy gear, you will invest in, you know, where an expensive things, but it doesn't have to happen before you start looking for a gig. You know, if you're, that's if you're breaking in.
Right. And I think that's huge to be prepared with, you know, what to have on you at all times, because when you are just getting that day here or there, that's what makes you stand out of like, oh man, the battery just went, got it. Like you
Yeah,
take care
exactly.
of things on the
Well, it's like,
spot.
so, but you remember being a PA,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, hey, I need a hot brick, and you just hand one out, and you didn't have to go running for another one right
Right.
away. You know what I mean? So you have to be prepared in that sense that, you know, what can I think about ahead of time? Don't ever be afraid to make mistakes, because there will always be somebody there to correct you. But, you know, don't ever be afraid to be called out on a mistake you made. You know what I mean? Because that's the only real way you're ever going to learn anything, is somebody saying, hey, that's not the right thing to do that. Because, you know, there is absolutely no way for you to know everything
Right.
on day one. You know, there is no way for you to, one, even if you've got a little bit of experience, you can't, you're like, you know, when I did Drop Dead Diva, but that's not the same family that did Vampire Diaries. So even though I had days behind me on Drop Dead Diva, it's a whole different animal when you go to Vampire Diaries. You know, because those two different shows have their own languages each, and how they speak and how they operate, and, you know, the the way it's done. You know, put it in your head that this is going to be a learning experience when you don't know something. So if they call you out on it, they called you out, but you've learned something. You know what I mean? So don't ever
Yeah.
be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to, I don't know, sometimes I'm like, ooh, mistakes, like that feels so bad sometimes. But it's like it's learning the way someone prefers to work. Because I've, you know, working with production designers and art directors, no pairing has worked the same. Even my job as coordinator, just how I fit within that dynamic is never the same. So yeah, something I really like to stress is be adaptable and
Yeah,
ask questions.
absolutely.
And as you go, like, you know, certain things are never going to change. Like, you know, you're always going to need to have charged batteries. Like, so that's how you can, you
Right,
know the basics.
right.
And then just feel out how people work, and you know, just know that there's a learning curve on both sides.
Yeah.
um and yeah, you both sides just need to be a bit graceful for that until you get that shorthand, and then it's like, ah, it's
Yeah.
easy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it's the same way, like going from one show to another. It's the same way working for one mixer or another. No two mixers in this world do anything the same way. It's the general understanding that, yeah, we plug in microphones, we wire talent, we hit record, and then we turn in the card at the end of the day. Sure, why not? But going from a sound mixer that does episodic TV is not the same as going to a sound mixer that does feature films. I learned how this guy likes to do things, but how is it that you like to do things? Because this is what I'm used to. What is it that you want? You know what I mean? Like, you have to sort of have that open mind that it's not the same everywhere you go.
What else do you want to share in regards to speaking to the learning curve, you know, of someone that is, you know, maybe knows a little bit or is brand new, and because you know how like the pressure cooker instances happen, is like, do I say something, do I ask something, like when you're really not sure and they're literally about to hit record and you just like got to get clarification, like what do you, can you speak to, you know, giving advice in situations like that?
What I say to people first starting out in this industry, which we've all dealt with, newbies who come in and don't know really what they're doing, and they really are trying the best. The most exhaustive thing you can ever do on a film set, the most exhaustive thing you will ever do on a film set, is constantly pay attention. When your mind is going a million miles an hour because you've got a lot going on, paying attention is probably the most exhaustive thing you have to do. You don't have to lift up anything. You don't have to do any manual labor for you to be exhausted just from that. So when you're paying attention and you're seeing things happen, if you've got a red flag, it's better that you speak up and ask than keep your mouth shut and then later go, oh yeah, I saw that. I knew that was going to happen, but you guys wanted to roll, so I didn't say anything. You know, and even if when you hear the bell and they're calling to roll cameras, you still got time to go, hey, there's this thing going on. Do we need to be worried about it? You know what I mean? You kind of have to just keep your wits about you. There's no room for falling asleep on set, you know, or not really falling asleep. What I mean to say is falling asleep at the wheel, you know, because the machine's going whether you're with it or not. You know what I mean? So always just keep your wits about you. Always ask, because it's better that you ask ahead of time than to say something else after the fact.
Have you ever run into instances, or I guess how often do you run into instances where lighting affects, you know, your placement with the booms, and like, does that happen often?
Every time out.
Yeah.
There's always, and that's where the boom operator needs to know what he's looking at and have his head on straight about where he's, you know, as far as his spatial awareness goes, because he needs to know that this light is pointing this way, so it's going to catch a shadow in this direction. You know, this light is catching this, so I can't cross that. You know, every take, every setup that I've ever worked on, there always has to be the conscious, I don't know if that's the way to say it, you always have to be aware of what the lights are doing, because that's the major component that's going to dictate whether you can boom something or not. You know, camera frames may be high, but sometimes, you know, you can get right on the edge of frame and capture the dialogue. But if that light's casting a shadow on your actor's face, then you can't do it.
Any hard lessons learned or anything that's like stuck with you throughout the years?
Yes, absolutely. Check your ego, because no matter how experienced you are, you snap at the wrong person and you're gone. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be somebody higher up, but if you've got a bad attitude, and if you've got, you know, for the lack of better words, if you've got something stuck up your ass, they'll make sure they'll fix it or find somebody else. You know what I mean? So it's check your ego at the door, because you're there to do your job, and that's, at the end of the day, that's all you can do. You know what I mean? And it's better to make friends than enemies. So, you know, you will always have disagreements. You will always have arguments. That's not the last time you're going to see that person, especially in a small community like the film community. And even so, in this town, you will always have to work with somebody that you've had an argument with. And you can't have somebody go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to do it because I don't like you. And because you know, like any other department, you need other departments' help. Understand the fact that you're not doing it alone. So you can't make enemies, and you can't have arguments, and you can have arguments, you can have discussions, you can have, you know, there has to be this sense of, I'm bringing a problem, but I need a solution. Oh, but I've got a problem and I need a solution. And somehow you guys got to somewhere meet in the middle, because at the end of the day, you don't want anybody to look bad just because you look good. If that makes any sense, you know.
I'm sure you've heard this a lot too, of like, oh, we're not saving lives at the end of the day, or where's the fire? You know, the stakes can feel very high and intense, and your job, your task may feel the most important at the end of the day, or within that moment. But keeping in mind, it is a team effort. There's a lot of moving factors, and safety is definitely an important factor on set, especially when you get with these big lights or certain locations. So yeah, it's like, and I mean, myself, and I'm sure a lot of people just have to remind themselves sometimes, just like, slow down, take a breath.
Yeah.
And, you know, just get focused, you know, in the moment of, you know, we are making a movie, and ideally art at the end of the day. And, you know, there is, you know, stakes and importance in that. But yeah, just remembering that you're not the only one there with a mission.
Right, exactly. Everybody's got a job to do, and they all want to do it well.
Yeah, to the best of their ability, absolutely.
Yeah. I've definitely been on shows where they go, I don't care about sound. And you can't let that deter you. You know what I mean? You know, we've got a shower scene and they've got dialogue while the shower's going, but I don't care about sound. We'll figure something else out. And it's more like, You can't take it too personal, because
Yeah.
sometimes there are bigger fish to fry. And you know what I mean? And sometimes it's your day in the barrel, all those euphemisms, um, and to anybody starting out, especially if you're younger than most of your crew members, remember to remember that somebody else on that crew in your department, no matter what department, has been doing it a little bit longer than you. So maybe instead of saying, I know how to do this, or I've been trying to do this, just keep your mouth shut and listen to what they got to say, and then take it home. Because then once you digest, once you have that nourishment of somebody else's knowledge, it makes sense. And there's a reason behind it. And there's the experience that they're willingly giving you because they made the mistake and they don't want you to make the mistake. You know what I mean? It's if you're especially if you're brand new, let's say just out of college, or maybe even just out of high school, and you want to break in, just do the best thing you can do is listen instead of talking. If you can avoid embarrassing yourself in front of people because you don't know what you're doing, it's probably best.
Yeah, I mean, embarrassing yourself and to some extent the department, depending on what it
Oh
is.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's, oh yeah. So when you were speaking to, people that, are new, I, I don't know if you encounter this as much in sound, but in our department, especially students that are graduating colleges that come with like these very art intensive degrees that they have been a production designer on, so they think
Yeah.
they know a lot, which I'm not trying to say their education is worthless by any means.
No, no, not at all.
But it is a different, just like going from a studio project TV to a feature film, like everything's going to be different. So it's like, just because you've had a nugget of experience does not mean the whole thing, the whole picture.
Right.
So yeah, I think coming in with the attitude of listening twice as much as you speak is,
Yeah.
I think, huge. Because I've, especially where, with my position as art coordinator, I'm often the main person training PAs. And if they're not coachable, as I call it, like, I'm not hiring them again because they can't take direction because they think they know better.
Right.
And that's
Right.
just such a frustrating place to be in. And it hurts the flow of the department.
Yeah. But that's, sometimes that's the best lesson for them, and there's this thing, at least I know in the sound department there is, but I think it's pretty broad stroke that, you don't get fired from a film. They just don't ever call you back for the next one. And I think that was a hard lesson for me because I lost my first job 2 years in. 2 years in, I had finished every job I had started, and that job, was a bear. And I struggled really hard. I struggled really, really hard. Um, and it was, they said, hey, we got to replace you because somebody said something that you did or whatever. And it's a hard lesson. And everybody gets let go from a job here and there. It happens to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not the black mark that it sounds like, but it is definitely something that has to happen for you to understand, hey, this is serious. I should just get my head down and work and keep my head down and work, and it's sometimes that's the best thing that you can do for somebody, to say, hey, you can't do this job anymore.
I think that we've really touched on, the intensity of this work culture. Can you speak to the having a work-life balance, or how you seek that, or how you possibly recover on the weekends?
um it's odd because a film job requires so much of your time. It's I've never had a job that has promised 10 hours or less, 10 hours or less, actually go for less than 10 hours. It's definitely gone beyond that. And, I've definitely had some very long days. But, you know, when you don't have a job, like let's say you finish a job, if you haven't booked a job already, maybe keep making phone calls to find the next one. But if you've booked one that starts 2-3 weeks after your last one, don't answer the phone for those 3 weeks. And just not, I mean, that's an extreme example, but just, take your time to recharge your batteries. Because you are definitely going to have those jobs that go like this. You end shooting on Friday and you begin the second job on Monday. That happens. And then of course there's the other side of the spectrum where you ended a job in January and you don't get another job till July. If you think ahead, you can definitely have a quality lifestyle, where you can do everything you want that's not related to work. And then you can't do all the work you can stand. But, while you're working, it's tough. And on the weekends, by Friday, it's a Fraturday. That's the common thing. I mean, if you're lucky, you'll have a job like I had on Insatiable, where I think our latest call time we ever had was 11 a.m. on Friday. The entire show. Except, no, that's not true. We had one day where we had to do an overnight, and they saved it for Friday, so it wouldn't delay the rest of the week. And I want to say that was my best production gig yet, because they treated production treated us well. Things from, great call times to, whenever we asked for a pre-call, we always got it. Because we were looking ahead, they was like, okay, for that day, you'll need a pre-call. It's not tomorrow, but it's, whatever. And then, they always, the actors on that always just, they were just the best cast I've ever worked with. We had food trucks on set for, I want to say, about 75% of the time. Like, it was like a food truck of some kind or a coffee truck of some kind.
Oh, so nice.
Three days a week.
What studio was this?
This was at Screen Gems.
Okay.
And the show was Insatiable. That was for Netflix. That went for only 2 seasons. I did season 1.
Yeah. And I like working for Netflix.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
I've definitely worked for worse, if that makes any difference. Yeah, I've definitely worked for worse. Oh, work-life balance. That's right. Sometimes you will get the shows that will just put you through the ringer. And, those really tough shows are where you really cut your teeth. You kind of develop that sense of, this is what my life is going to be like at its worst, or my work life, excuse me, not my life, my work life at its worst. So you need to sort of develop that gauge of where you understand the good shows. Even though those are hard shows, you understand, you appreciate the good ones that you treat you well. The most effort I put in the weekends is I make sure that I breathe and I relax. It's you sit, you chill. And the best thing that you can do, if you have any personal business that needs to be taken care of during the week, if you got personal business, like if you got, things going on in your personal life, you need to communicate the fact that, hey, I've got this to do. I'm not going to fail you, but I'm going to ask for, time to have to deal with this during the day. And you can usually get away with that, but you can't make it a common thing. You know what I mean? And it's, you have to deal with it. If you have to deal with it, you have to deal with it. And if that's your priority, then that's your priority. Mm-hmm. But if you have to make the hard decision, whether it's your work life or your personal life, then, that's whichever way you decide to go, that's up to you. And nobody's going to judge you for it, because it's understandable that those choices have to be made sometimes. And,
yeah,
I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, something you said earlier where, we may not, certain roles may not be physically demanding, the mental demand of it. And with that, definitely as emotions, especially with like the stress that, the stress of the environment of, there's so many moving factors. It is a moving freight train, and you're just like holding on
hanging on for dear life. Yeah.
And then, if you have something that's, weighing on you on top of that, it's like, definitely take care of yourself at the end of the
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
And for one thing, a good boss will understand. And like you said, it may just be, for half a day or take the day, like, do what you have to do.
Right.
Um, yes, there'll be feast and famine that, but there will always be work though. There'll always be another opportunity,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially if it's meant to be like within that month, within that year. I know that's so hard, especially with, COVID happening of there's so much uncertainty right now. Even if you're on a job and we're still in the early parts of, shows opening back up.
Hmm.
It's like we don't know. I don't think a show has experienced where it's gotten shut down yet due to COVID.
You mean coming out of the pandemic, a show starting back up from what it was before?
Right. Yeah, like let's say a show has started and then someone, an actor or director or, someone that's like got a pivotal role in the project gets COVID. Like I that
Oh,
hasn't
I see what you're
happened
saying.
yet.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think, I haven't heard of anything yet. I imagine that that person would either get replaced, would be the primary effort. But I think most crew members would call for the shutdown just so they can make sure that everybody that tested negative won't test positive later on, or something, or just to cut off the spread, right at the bud. You know what I mean? And you can't blame these productions for making an effort to keep going, because it is a business that if it fails, a lot of jobs go away. When the pandemic hit, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to have to move out of my place or risk getting evicted, or where I was going to go if it ever came to that. Thankfully, I've been able to, you know, stay where I'm at, and thankfully I've been safe. And I'm probably one of the few people. Have you gotten tested for COVID yet? Ever?
Oh, yeah. So I started back to work late late July,
Oh,
and my
wow.
show actually, yeah, so I've been, yeah, and we get tested weekly. Um
I haven't been tested for
all the
COVID yet, not once.
Oh, okay. Well, you definitely will before you start your show.
Oh yeah, no, for this pilot, they're like, yeah, you need to come in with a negative test or you can't do the project.
Right. Yeah. They're
And I
gonna
think I
give you a
think
little
they
badge
may
with zones and
I
stuff.
yeah, I think they may set up somewhere where the crew members can come in and get tested like the day or 2 days beforehand, before we start shooting, basically. There has to be some kind of barrier to where you can go, hey, you can work next week, or no, you can't work next week because 200 other people need to work. You know what I mean? Like, there has to
Yeah.
be something there in these times to make sure that it just doesn't spread, you know?
Yeah.
And are you reporting to an office, or are you working from home?
Yeah, we're going into an office. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So I'm actually working as a construction buyer on this show. So what's happening with our show is we're really the only physical crew there. Um, and then we're building the sets, and then they're actually not going to shoot until the new year.
Gotcha. Oh,
So
wow.
it won't be a
Okay.
ton of overlap.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what? That's probably the best situation, not only because you're back to work, but then you work through the holidays and then you really start then you start shooting. So that's always the best scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like my personal position will be up sometime in October. And then I'll figure out my next step from there. I don't know
Oh,
exactly
so
what
you
that
don't
is
stay.
yet.
You're not staying
No. Yeah.
with the show until. Oh, okay. Well, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, it's fine. Like I was, thankfully one of the first ones back. We were definitely the guinea pigs, so it's been nice to like, pass on to, the crew that was coming behind me, what we've learned so far. And one of the things is like make sure you're sanitizing anything that's like something that's shareable. And I don't know how it work on set as much, but we had folding tables in a few places so people could set it down, spray it before someone picked it back up. So that's like just a little bit of a
Oh,
mind.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like a
So
sanitation station, basically. You wipe it down, and then you set it down so somebody else can pick it up. I got you. Yeah, yeah.
The industry is shifting because of that, like the workflow is. And we'll see what's here to stay and what's to go. Like as far as, paperwork wise, a lot has gone digital, which is good and bad. Like it's new platforms, so they're not, you can tell whoever made it does not work in the industry.
It's funny because that was one of the conversations this sound group was having on Zoom a couple weeks ago about digital time cards, digital start work. And I have always, you can ask any accountant, and I'm like, I have for the last 5 years, I've definitely only done it electronically. And it's where I either take the start packet and I scan in my computer and then I fill it out, or they already have it scanned and they email it to me. I fill it out and email it back. And I do the same thing with my time cards. And I'm trying to get everybody to do the same thing with the daily out sheets, just so you don't have PAs walking around, getting handed things from other departments. You know what I mean? So it's always a conversation. As far as prep goes for a show, it's always a conversation that I've made an effort to try. Most payroll accounts are, email your time card, but ADs are like, oh, sometimes I don't have internet. Sometimes, you can't text it or you can't email it because we're in the boonies somewhere and the service is shoddy. So it takes forever to try to download anything. There has got to be a way to get around that. You know what I mean? There has got to be. And you know what? Less paper, less dead trees.
I think some people are just like so afraid of technology and they just like, I don't understand it. And it's like that's the direction of our world though. Like to me it's like just take that learning curve. It's going in that direction.
I'm all for it. There's a show that I did for Netflix and I only day played for like a day, I think, but they had electronic start work. And I was like, this is the best thing that ever existed. All right, my puppy's got to get out.
I know. Well, thank you again so much and have a good rest of your night.
You too. I will talk to you later, okay?
All right, sounds good. Bye.